Okay, so we are ready for the first lesson in the preliminary course, which Mrs. Kerwin wrote for her Pianoforte method. And this is before step one, when the children actually use a piano book. These are completely oral lessons that the teacher helps the student discover ideas about music before they begin their lessons. And I'm going to read to you from the curriculum book the aim and the preparation of the lesson. And then how we'll do this is each video I'll have kind of a teacher video which walks you through this content, and then a second video that models this lesson for you. And even then, it's probably best for you as a mom or a teacher to watch these and then to try to take the printed version of the text and do it with your student. But I just want to kind of talk through this with you so you understand what it's saying in case you don't understand that. So the first lesson, the aim of this lesson is to engage the child's interest in his new work, to enable him to get at first hand, i.e. by experience, ideas about the pianoforte and about those musical facts which we call time and pitch. So the rhythm and the tune, okay? So first, we're going to talk about pitch in this lesson, and then the second time, part B, which will be a separate video, we'll talk about time. And as I explained in the introductory video for these preparation course, the preparatory course, she said that what's best is for the child to have short lessons each afternoon with the mother, and one day would be the pitch lesson and another day would be the time lesson, so that you don't have to teach that all in one day. So that's how I'll break up these videos. So here's a pitch. So for the pitch preparation, it says a first pianoforte lesson ought to be about the pianoforte itself. To most children, it is a familiar object. To some, it has always been associated with beautiful music. To others, it has been little more than a piece of furniture. Find out what the pupil knows about the pianoforte. He may never have given conscious attention to it, associating it altogether with grown-up people. But today it stands in a new relation to him. He himself is going to learn how to use it. And this fact alone will kindle a desire to examine it more closely. Examine it together. Encourage him to talk about it. Get at his ideas. He may have a few ideas. You must supplement them. He may have wrong ideas. You must set them right. Clear up and set in order the notions already in his mind, that these may be ready to seize upon and assimilate the new facts you are going to place before him. So that's the preparation. Now, the method of this lesson is the child will at least know where the player sits before the manual or the keyboard, and that as the player's fingers touch the digitals or the keys, he hears musical sounds. Draw this from him by questions, giving him the names manual and digital or keyboard and keys. Technical terms are among the things that a pupil cannot discover for himself. And in the introduction to this whole course, she goes more into depth about whether to call it a manual or the keyboard or digitals and keys. And so you can go back and watch that introduction to learn more about that and make your own choice about what you would like to call those things. Now, let us find out where the music comes from. So you open the piano together. If a grand, this is easy. If an upright, it is troublesome, but quite worth doing for the interest it creates. Let the child describe what he sees. Wires, long and thick wires, short and thin wires. Notice how they gradually become shorter and thinner. Show how the hammers act when the keys are put down. What sort of sound do we hear when a hammer strikes a long, thick wire? And then illustrate for them a low, full sound. And when it strikes a short, thin wire, you can ask that question and illustrate it for them. a high, thin sound? And what about a wire of middle length? And illustrate and play pianos in the middle, keys in the middle of the piano. Gives a middle sound, not very high or very low, etc. The wires in a pianoforte are called strings. This height and depth of sounds we call pitch. Illustrate how the word is used and use it as often as possible to fix it in their mind. This, touching a high digital, gives a sound of a very high pitch, and use that word pitch so they know what a pitch is. This, touching the low digitals, gives a sound of, and let the children answer, and of a very low pitch, and use that word pitch. And this, touching the middle of the piano, a middle digital, gives a sound of a middle pitch. And then for the practice, okay, ask the pupil to strike a sound of a low pitch, a middle pitch, a rather high pitch, etc. Now listen while I touch the keys one after another, going to the right hand end of the keyboard, and tell me what you notice about the pitch of these sounds, and ask that question. Strike all the sounds from middle C upward about 2 octaves. So you would just use your finger and run it up the piano, and the pitch grows higher and higher is what you can say. And now going to the left, and so strike middle C and run your finger down the piano downwards to the left. The pitch grows lower and lower. Now look inside the piano while I do that again, and have your child be watching. And perhaps you can tell me why the pitch of the sounds grew higher and higher. Because the hammer struck the strings that were shorter and shorter. Yes, and now you're going to go downwards. The strings are longer and longer, and the sounds are lower and lower. This is something your child should observe and discover, okay? So we find that short, thin strings give sounds of high pitch, and long, thick strings give sounds of low pitch. And because the high sounds come when we go to the right, and the low sounds are to the left of us, we call the right and left ends of the keyboard the top and the bottom of it, though as you see, it is quite level. So these are all things that we're helping the child discover. Now, if the pianoforte only gave a sound of one pitch, could we play tunes on it? So strike any sound, you play any sound such as middle C several times with the child listening, and play it, and then say, would you call that a tune? Let him listen again, this time to a real tune, just the melody only, no bass. So just your right hand, maybe play a short little tune. What made the difference? Why was that suddenly a tune? And the child might not be able to put his thought into words, it says. Help him. Let him listen again to both. In the first illustration, he heard one pitch only repeated. In the second, the sounds were of different pitch and they went up and down. So we find that to make what we call a tune, we must have sounds of a different pitch. And that melody will move around. And so you can help that child discover that idea. An instrument on which we can play the tunes is called a musical instrument. How many musical instruments does the child know of? So have a conversation about that. And then there's an ear exercise. And so for the ear exercise, it says, now let the child shut his eyes and say, after listening carefully, whether the sounds struck are very high, very low, rather high, medium, etc. And so that's the end. And that's took me about 9 minutes to read and describe to you. So I would suspect it would be about a 15-minute lesson with the child, and you would be done for that day. Now, I do want to skip over the time lesson and just read to you the homework piece that's given at the end of the pitch and time lesson. It says, number 1, to tell the mother or practice superintendent. So a teacher would do this, but if you are the mother and the teacher, you would just, maybe do these things. It says, tell the teacher or the mother a little bit about each of these 3 things. The pitch, time, and I'm sorry, there's C, touch. And then every day until the next lesson, they should touch a few digitals gently with one finger, thinking about the pitch of the sounds and what is happening inside the piano. And then the next step is to find out anything he can about other musical instruments and tell about them at the next lesson. So that could be something you could do as a family together. Look in the windows of music shops or ask people, or in our day, maybe watch a YouTube video about the orchestra. If the pupil is old enough or sufficiently intelligent, he may find out how some of these instruments produce sounds of different pitch. Then every day, ask the mother or the practice superintendent to play just one tune and the child to march to it. Whenever he hears a barrel organ, to march or clap or dance to the tunes it plays. And that's a homework piece for the rhythm lesson. And then the child learns by doing. This is the note at the end. And by doing, he tells us what he has learned. Whether he claps or marches or dances does not matter very much, but until he does something, we cannot tell whether or not he has the sense of pulse from which all his rhythmic training must start. So that's kind of giving you a vision for the homework. So in our next video, we'll read through about what you can do for the rhythm part of the lesson. And then the third part will be for the touch, or how they actually play their fingers on the keys. So I hope that makes sense, and then I'll show a video lesson with my child doing these lessons as well.